everyone. Hello, hello. Welcome to the Spirit Speaker KC podcast. I am Jamie. I am a psychic medium. And tonight, I thought that we would have a little bit of a discussion about how mediums, how intuitives um, get their information. What I get asked that, like, how do you do this? How do you do this? So remember, as a medium, we're communicating with those that are no longer in the physical body, connecting with their soul, the energy of them. And I do get asked how we do that. And one of the ways that we do that is something called the clairs, Clair, the clairs, which is a French word, comes from a French word meaning clear. So this is how I get information when I'm in a session with a client. And I believe we've all experienced this in some way, shape, or form, even though we may not have called it the clairs. But I believe that we all have experienced this at some time. So I'm just going to go through a few of the things, a few examples about the clairs, and kind of explain those, whether it would be mediumship or whether it would be intuitive or psychic. So one of the first ways is called clairvoyance. Clairvoyance. Some people call themselves clairvoyants, and this is when you receive information through seeing. So it's clear seeing. So this would be where you receive your information in pictures, symbols, images. You just get all of these pictures. And what I've discovered in my mediumship and teaching others, and even from my own experience when I first started out, I have found that beginning mediums, intuitives, those that are first beginning their development, we're all very picture heavy. We see everything in pictures. And so it's like if I said apple, you would see the apple in your mind's eye. Or I said the beach or a motorcycle. It's when you get these pictures. So, spirit from the other side, in order to get a message to me or get something to me, will use pictures. But the thing you will find out as you develop your mediumship is that you can't always just rely on the picture. You know that old saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and pictures may be coming left and right to you, but that you can't always take pictures literally. There sometimes they can mean something else. And it's just through development, it's just through practice, it's through sensing where you learn what those pictures mean. And let's take the example of an apple. You may be sitting with a client, you may be doing a reading, and all of a sudden in your mind's eye, an apple pops up. Now, let's be honest. We don't know what that apple means. It could literally be an apple. It could be that somebody lived on Apple Street. It could be because the loved one coming from spirit owned an apple business, an apple orchard. So you get what I'm saying is you can't always just take the picture for the picture. It could mean anything. And you say, well, how do you know what that apple means then? Again, it's practice, it's developing, it's learning to sense, feel what other things are going on, which we'll get with the other clairs. So, an example I had in a reading once, I'm reading for this woman, and all of a sudden, I got a picture in my mind of Disney World. And this picture of Disney World, right in the front is Mickey Mouse. But I just had a sense that this wasn't about Disney World. I could have gone a million different ways. It could have been about mice. It could have been about Mickey. It could have been about a trip to Disney World. It could have been, let's face it, it could have been 20 or 30 things. But during this reading, using some of the other clairs that we'll talk about, I knew this had nothing to do with Mickey Mouse or Disney World. And so I had the client and I asked her, I said, would you understand, would you know of someone named Mickey, a woman in spirit named Mickey? And oh my gosh, she said yes, and she starts bawling. And this was one of her good friends named Mickey, who was like a counselor or a good friend / counselor who really helped her out in some tough times. And Mickey was in spirit, and Mickey was coming through wanting to say hello to my client. So this is why I said you have to be very careful, especially if you're someone who's just beginning your development, is you can't be distracted by the pictures alone, because they can lead you down the wrong road. And what also happens as we're beginning and we're just starting out, pictures are everywhere. I always say it's kind of like kindergarten. You know, in kindergarten, they can't read yet, or a majority of kindergartners can't read. What are they doing? They're learning their letters. It's kind of that foundation, that the basics. They're learning their letters, they're learning their numbers. Well, for me, it's kind of that same thing in mediumship. When we're first starting out, we want to see everything in pictures. Everything. I've students will be, Jamie, I'm seeing this. Jamie, what does this mean? And all of this. And I'm always like, you can't be distracted by the pictures, because those pictures can mean a million and one things. So clairvoyance, you will hear sometimes if we're doing exercises and maybe we're doing a clairvoyant exercise, I'll say, what pictures did you get? But what I have discovered about clairvoyance, this is one thing I have discovered over time. When we're beginning, we get pictures. But as we develop and as the years go on, the pictures start to go away. They're not as strong as they were at the beginning stages of our development. So don't be surprised or afraid that you're losing your clairvoyance if after some time you're not seeing as many pictures as you used to. That's really beautiful. That means you're developing, you're growing. Spirit is kind of letting you know you don't need the pictures as much as you do. Because now in my development, I still see pictures. I don't want to say I don't, but I don't see them as much as I did in my beginning development. And now I know when pictures pop up, that means it was difficult, or it would have been hard for me to figure out what was needed to be said to my client. For example, the Mickey. How was Spirit going to get the name Mickey to me? Yes, it could maybe another way, but they used Mickey Mouse. And me, with years of practice, I just knew, I trusted that Mickey was someone in spirit. So clairvoyance is the first way. That's how a medium, that's how an intuitive will pick up information, is through pictures, images, symbols. Is through clairvoyance. Another way that we receive information is clairaudience. Clairaudience. And that is clear hearing. And again, all of this is in the mind, okay? Sometimes you may get something objectively, meaning outside of the body. You have subjectively inside and objectively outside. So clairaudience is clear hearing. So during a session, I may be giving a reading and all of a sudden I can hear a train whistle. in my mind. I might hear a motorcycle. I might hear waves on a beach. So this is when spirit gives us information. We're sensing information through clear hearing. Okay? So again, you have to be very careful what that means. What does that sound of motorcycle may not necessarily be, oh, your Uncle Jim in spirit, he liked to ride motorcycles. It could mean anything. He went to Sturgis. You hear motorcycles. Maybe he didn't ride, or he did ride motorcycles, but every year he went to Sturgis. So clairaudience is clear hearing. You will receive information through sounds, clairaudience. Some people, I've heard of mediums from decades and decades ago. Her name escapes me, but there was this famous woman medium, and she was very clairaudient. It was like she was on the telephone with spirit. She was very strong clairaudient, and it was like spirit was talking to her, and she said that she could hear spirit objectively outside of the body. So that may happen to you. I know a couple of examples of clairaudience. I don't know how many of you out there may have had this experience. I've been asleep, or what I call in that twilight state, that in-between stage, and I could have sworn I heard someone say my name. And it wasn't in my mind. It was literally, I heard someone say my name. And I just figured it's someone from the other side. It's a guide. It's someone, but sometimes you will get clairaudience objectively or outside of the body. So again, everyone's experience is different, but that's clairaudience. Another one that you may get information is what's called clairsentience. Clairsentience. And this is when spirit you will sense information of spirit through the physical body, through sensing. You're not seeing anything. You're not hearing anything. You're sensing it in your physical body. And this very well could be times I've given readings and maybe I felt like I had shortness of breath, or I had pain in my leg, or I had head pain. And this is when you're sensing information through the physical body. It's kind of like when people say, oh, I've got goosebumps. They sense spirit around and they'll get goosebumps, or they'll get really cold, or they'll get really warm. But this is when you're sensing information from those across the veil through the physical body. And I get that sometimes when I feel shortness of breath, or like I said, I have a headache and know that someone had migraines. And again, it may come in. It's not only that, but you can also feel emotions through clairsentience. And we always talk about how mediumship is a big part of an emotional experience. And so one of the ways that you might also sense things about those on the other side is through the emotion. And clairsentience, which is connected to the solar plexus, that's where of the chakra, that's where clairsentience. So there have been many, many, many times, almost every reading I give, I'm getting some type of clairsentience of emotion. Whether they were happy, whether they were sad, whether they were depressed, maybe they were angry. You can get emotions through the clairsentience, because how else do you get emotions? It's not like clairvoyant. It's an image, a picture. What's spirit going to show? Like a word that says sad or depressed? I don't think so. One of those, the way that they will help you, the way you will sense emotions is through the solar plexus and through the clairsentience. It's through the physical body. So it may be pains. It may be pains. You feel things, shortness of breath or pain or whatever physical experience maybe that person had, or it could be through emotions. Don't forget about the emotion component of clairsentience. Okay? It actually has a few other components, but that's kind of really advanced, but we'll just keep it simple here for the beginning. So we've had clairvoyance with the pictures or image or symbols. We've had clairaudience with the hearing, clear hearing. We've had clairsentience, which is sensing through the physical body. Maybe the way that spirit passed, you may have felt a heart attack or felt tightness in the chest. And then through emotions is a big way. Another clair that you will experience, that I think we all have experienced at some time, is claircognizance. Claircognizance. And this is what we call a clear knowing. And it's where you don't know how you know, you just know. You know, you're giving a reading, and you're giving a reading, and all of a sudden you can say, yeah, and your grandma had 4 kids, and you have no idea where that came from. You, in your mind, you didn't see 4 children. You didn't hear the spirit grandma say, I had 4 kids. You just had this knowingness, and that's what claircognizance is. It's a knowing. You don't know how you know, you just know. Now, I come from the belief, now, not everyone may believe this, but I come from the belief that claircognizance is when you're kind of getting clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience all at once. But, you know, in equal measure, but it's so fast you don't even realize it. It's just like whoosh, it's coming in. But maybe you didn't have time to process a picture or hear the word. But claircognizance is just that. It's a clear knowing. And sometimes I've asked students, or even myself, people will be like, well, how did you know that? And I'll go, I have no idea. I just knew. I just knew. So that's just another way of getting information. And those 4 are the most common clairs: clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, and claircognizance. Those are the 4 most common clairs that you will experience. There are a couple of others that you will occasionally may experience, and one is called clairgustance. Clairgustance, and this is clear tasting. And I've experienced it very, very little. It's one of those that I don't experience that often. But it may be where, you know, you're like, I'm tasting blood. Or I'm tasting this real bitter taste. So it's really one of those things where you will sense something, or sense that from that spirit there's a taste. Maybe that spirit that's coming through loved whiskey, you know, or beer, and all of a sudden you're getting a taste of whiskey. You're tasting the whiskey. That may be one of those things that comes up. You're not sure, but you go, I have this taste of whiskey. So that's clear tasting. That's clairgustance. And again, it's not very common, but I bring it up because you never know. It might come up. Another one is called clairalience. Clairalience. And this is clear smelling. And you might get this one quite often. I shouldn't say often, but I might say often. And that's the sense or clear smell. You smell a cigarette, or, you know, you smell the whiskey that I was talking about. There's the smell. I'll never forget one time I was at work, And at this time, I was the only one in the office. In this office, I shared with one other person, but that person wasn't there. So I'm just sitting there at my desk, and all of a sudden, I got the strongest smell of Bengay that I've ever smelled in my life. And it literally came out of nowhere. And you all know Bengay is not a very common smell, unless I guess you're in a nursing home somewhere, you're around elderly people. But I smelled Bengay so much so that I even got up and went to some of the outer offices and was like, is someone putting on Bengay or icy hot, any of that? And they're all looking at me like I'm crazy. But I had this strong sense of smell of Bengay for like a minute and a half. And then it dawned on me as a kid when I was growing up, when I got older, my grandmother had really bad arthritis in her knees. And so when I would go visit her, she would always ask me if I would rub Bengay in her knees. So when after I come back from asking everybody, it just hit me. I was like, Grandma? Maybe that was her way of popping in, wanting to say hello, knowing that the Bengay smell would make me think of her. And what's really you have to remember about that is think of those on the other side. They don't have a physical body, and they want to get our attention. So think about your loved one, they're on the other side and they don't have a physical body. What are some ways that they can get your attention, our attention, and let us know that they're around? What's their hello from heaven? What's their I'm just here popping in, wanting to say, I'm here? What is a way? And I truly believe that was my grandmother who, just for a moment, wanted me to know that she was around. That was her hello. I'm here. And then after about a minute, minute and a half, the smell was gone. And I just remember thinking that was pretty cool that my grandmother, and pretty smart when you think about it. We always talk about the intelligence of the spirit world. And it's just, I've always, one of the things as a medium I've been amazed about is the way that they communicate, wanting to connect with us and the ways that they do that. It totally blew me away. So I've had many a client say, no one in my home smokes, but I go home and it smells like someone's been smoking in the house. And I know one smokes, but you know what? My dad was a chain smoker. I'm like, that was your dad wanting to say hello. And they knew the cigarette smell would get you. So again, just think of the ways they're going to use really unique, and when you think about it, really intelligent ways to let us know that they are around. Okay, so that's clairalience, that clear smelling. And then one that's has kind of two names for it. You may have heard of clairtangency. Clairtangency, which is a what we call clear touch or sensing of touch. It's more commonly referred to as psychometry. So this might be where you hold something of a loved one's, and everything is energy. The chair you sit in, your car keys, your hairbrush, your wallet, anything that has your touch on it has energy, your energy. So clairtangency, or more commonly referred to as psychometry, is a way that you can also connect with loved ones. If any of you are familiar with Tyler Henry, the young man from California, he is big. He asks people to bring an item of a loved one, and he holds it in his hands. And as he holds that object in his hands, he gets a download of information, and it's energy. He's just picking up because that loved one owned that, touched that, and he can get information. I know in my development circle, we will do that once or twice a year, where the participants in the class, they bring an object of a loved one, and we switch them up with people in the class, and people hold on to those objects and see what they get. So it's really cool. If you believe that everything is energy, whether it's a building, people can, some of these ghost shows, or where they go to old schools or old prisons or these old buildings, in a way that's kind of like psychometry. Those physical things have energy, whether it's car keys or a building. It has residual energy, and you can pick up things from the energy of those objects. So those are the ways that mediums, when people say, well, how do you get that? How do you get information? It's through the clairs. You find that stillness in your heart. You find that stillness, you get quiet, you connect with spirit, set the intention, invite them in, and then what happens is, through the clairs, you get information. Whether it's pictures of clairvoyance, you hear the sound through clairaudience, you get a feeling of sadness through clairsentience, you have a knowingness with claircognizance, you get a taste through clairgustance, you get a smell through clairalience, or there's psychometry or clairtangency. This is how you get information from those from across the veil. And I guarantee we've all gotten one of those in some way through a loved one from the other side. And it's one of those things I always say, you're in the spirit world. Just imagine, take 30 seconds, you've crossed over. How would you let your loved ones know that you're here? And that's the clairs are one of the ways. And before I go, that's no different if you're not a medium and you're psychic. You get the information the same way. Let's say you're reading someone who's across from you and you're giving a psychic reading. Nothing has changed. As you're sitting across from that person who's wanting a psychic reading, you're getting the same thing. You're going to get images, symbols, you're going to get pictures, you're going to hear sounds, you're going to get feelings. It's not just those that have crossed over that you get the clairs. It's the same thing if that person is in a physical, that soul is in a physical body. You're just reading the energy of someone who's in a physical body, and you're still receiving that information through the clairs. It's no different. So I just want to make that distinguishing thing about that, is that it's no different if that person is in the body. If you're sitting across from me and I'm giving you a psychic reading, I'm tuning into your energy. I'm tuning into you. And as I tune into your energy, I'm becoming aware. The clairs are kicking in high gear. I'm going to get pictures and images and hear sounds and get feelings. Nothing's changed. And then if I'm giving a psychic reading and something were to happen, bloop, and you drop dead, I would still be connecting to your energy. The only difference is now you're in the spirit world rather than in the physical body. Nothing has changed. Okay? So I hope that helps with kind of an understanding of how we get information as a medium or as a psychic. Generally, people will have a strength. Some people are very clairvoyant. Some people are very clairsentient. I'm a very clairsentient person. Very seldom do I get pictures and images. Somebody will be, I'll have a client say, well, Jamie, did you see what my dad looked like? Or did you see what my grandma looked like? And I'll be like, nope, I didn't. I don't see spirits very often, unless there's something very unique or special. Maybe grandma had one leg and I might sense that. But I very seldom see spirits. A lot of my students are very clairvoyant. I'm always amazed. They'll be giving descriptions of people, and I'm like, how in the world are you doing that? How do you? Well, I just see them, and I'm at that point where I clairvoyance is not one of my strengths. I'll just say that. I do get pictures. I don't want you to think I don't get pictures. It's just that I consider myself more clairsentient. I'm a feeler. When I invite spirit in and their energy, I invite them to wrap their energy around me. I'm not seeing them. I'm simply feeling their soul, their spirit merge with my soul, and I'm feeling. So what I've discovered over time, that we're all unique. It's like a fingerprint. Some people might be very even in all of them. All of those different clairs, they get a little bit of everything. Some are very clairvoyant. Some might be very clairaudient. They hear things. But there is no right or wrong, good or bad. It's just learning how, when you do get the clairs, it's really important not to take them at face value. You have to really sense what's trying to come through from those across the veil. So don't take it. Sometimes it is just what it is. Sometimes you see an apple and it is an apple. Maybe they were a teacher and you used to bring the teacher apples all the time. So sometimes it can be literal, but there's no shortcut. It's generally just practice, development, giving readings, and you just learn to get a sense of that. So I hope that helped you with the clairs, or how mediums or intuitives get information from energy. Those are the clairs, and I hope you got something out of that. And if you're a developing medium or someone who's kind of beginning this path, really think about those clairs and how you get information. And if you are giving practice readings, you might want to set the intention with spirit. Say, hey, spirit, I'd really like to work on my clairvoyance during this practice session. And let's work with pictures. And then another time you might be practicing and set the intention with spirit and say, hey, you know what, spirit, I'd really like to work on my clairsentience, my feeling through the physical body this practice time. So set the intention with spirit. I've found over the years that spirit loves to help us. They love to make us develop and grow in our mediumship. So if you set that intention before you start a practice session, I have found that spirit is more than willing to help us with whatever way that we need to get that practice. So I hope that helps. Thank you for listening in on this episode on the clairs. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also listen to me on Spotify, and you can find out all the information you need by visiting my website, spiritspeakerkc.com. And thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.